Welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm your host, Harmony, and I'm here with Russell K.
We're excited. We're going to put this all on tape.
Yes.
We are putting this whole podcast on
Camera
celluloid
rolling.
tape.
Camera
rolling.
Recording.
And you wouldn't believe this. Martha in Florida would not believe this, but we have stacks and stacks of celluloid film in the back closet of all of the podcasts. We've done over 100.
Celluloid film?
I've done over 100 now, and it's really the backup copies are accumulating.
Well, our guest today is also a Floridian, like Martha. Is that a real word? Would you call yourself a Floridian?
Floridian. Yeah.
Well, Florida Florida woman shows up on camera yet again.
Anyway, Miranda Mitchell, welcome. Thank you for coming on and being our guest.
And you are a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. You're one of the dancers for the team, as I understand.
Sure. Why not? No, I am not.
We contacted you. Okay.
They contacted you. Tell us.
You look like maybe you did a bit of dancing in your past somewhere. Did you do some dancing?
No, not at all. I mean, I guess when I was a kid, I loved to dance. So, and I do love to dance, but no, I lift, yoga, all those fun things. No dancing, except for when I was a kid.
Okay.
Tell us about growing up in Florida. What was that like?
Well, I was going to do a follow-up question, which is...
Too late. I already followed it up.
The follow-up question is like, well, when we all met, I think, in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And you had come up for a yoga trip, and you had studied with us there. And I was struck by you. You were like a phenomenal athlete. So I thought you must have had some kind of background in something.
I think you have a lot of hypermobility, right, Miranda? Yes.
Hypermobility. I mean, I practiced a lot. I've always lifted because of my hypermobility, so I did have strength. But it is my hypermobility that has really caused my back issues that I've actually recently been having for the last 9 months.
Wow.
It's not a blessing, no matter what they tell you in the scriptures.
In the yoga scriptures.
Yes, exactly. And I could easily put my leg behind my head, but...
Yeah, that's fascinating, too, that you said you always done lifting, like weightlifting, in order to try to create more stability and strength in the joints, I would assume.
So I understand that you were a childhood weightlifter.
No, actually, I was very skinny and little as a child. So that's actually, I lifted weights to gain weight.
As a child?
Well, not as a child, no. I didn't lift weights.
So you grew up in Tampa. You're kind of like a giant Warren Sapp fan. And no, not Warren Sapp. They were the creamsicles then, the Tampa Bay creamsicles.
I have no idea because I grew up in Vermont.
Vermont? That's like New England.
Yes.
It's like a newer version of England.
Oh my goodness.
But we wanted to hear the story about her practicing with Krista Shirley.
Well, we got to start with her childhood in Vermont, sweetie.
You got
to go cyclical time, not linear time. Oh no, it's the opposite. So linear time, you're starting in Vermont. Your parents taught at Bennington. Is that what they did?
No. No,
got you all wrong.
I know. Like, we lived way out in the boondocks in Vermont. I'm the oldest of, when you put all of us together, there's 8. So I'm the oldest of 8.
Wow.
Like children?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or
8
children with pets?
Nope, just children.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
Were you a blended family?
Blended Irish family.
Actually, we're English.
English, are you? Are you Anglican? Anglican?
Yes. There
actually
some
Anglican.
Ancestors came over.
Yeah.
Cool. And so what was that like?
Well, living in Vermont,
in the
now
boondocks.
I want to go back. Yes. I want to go back because I miss it. But at that point in time, I wanted to go out and do things and get to meet people. So I hated it at that point. But so I moved out when I was like 14 and I started living with friends.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Where did you move to? Like into a city or something?
No, I actually just started moving in with friends. And then from there started like partying a lot. That's really all there is to do in Vermont, really.
Right.
So we partied a lot and I found myself from place to place. So there was a lot of, go ahead.
Can you describe, I mean, I can't imagine my mother letting me do that. Were you having a difficult relationship with your parents? Was it?
I still do. Yeah.
Okay. Especially your mom.
With my mom.
Yes. Yeah.
What would you say the difference is between you?
My mom and myself. I mean, there are a lot of similarities, but I feel like she's stuck in past beliefs and traumas and she's just stuck there. Whereas me, I work through things and I'm always looking to expand and grow, where she blames and she doesn't take responsibility for anything that she's done or not done.
That's super interesting because I've heard that about people have been talking about this, like the psychology of the Trumpist and then the conspiracy theorist is this tendency to blame others for your circumstances. Mm-hmm. But if you take responsibility for your circumstances and say, this is I'm the person in charge of my own life here, then you're much less likely to believe in conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, it really does. I'm going to do a little bit of human design there. There's a lot of human design that is about responsibility. I take on a lot of responsibility for things. And that is actually one of my kind of pet peeves is, if you take responsibility, I can easily forgive you. Just say, I'm sorry, or I messed up, or, I was young and I didn't know what I was doing. But for the people that don't take responsibility, it's all the projection of that they're separated from the other person, when in reality we're all connected and taking responsibility and love and compassion. That's totally different than blaming and projecting that energy of unworthiness and love onto other people. It's really a mirror. It's a mirror reflection.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think, is there something speaking of human design, since you're a human design expert, is there something in human design that shows that tendency to not take responsibility?
Well, within each one of the charts, there's different themes. So depending on the astrology markers that are activated in your chart, there's certain themes that you're really here to learn. So there's certain life themes you're here to learn. There's certain spiritual, I don't want to say patterns, but there's a low and a high expression of everything. So what happens is we're kind of living as a society in the lower expression because we feel like we have to externally prove our value and be worthy rather than internally looking within. So we're living at a lower expression. So we project all that inadequacy and pain onto other people out into the world, when really if we were looking in our chart and seeing our different themes in our life, like for me, a huge one is inadequacy. There was a lot of proving my value, proving my worth. And when I saw that in my chart, in my conscious sun, so what that means, that's the energy I'm here to put out, but the highest expression is wisdom. So through all of my inadequacies and all my studying and all my depth, I've become very wise, and it's really important for me to bring that out. That's what I'm here to bring society. So when we learn our shadows and learn the themes that we're here to work through to progress in life, then we step into the higher vibration, which is honestly what I love about it, because it connects so much with the yoga practices that I was doing and practicing for so many years. It felt like it was an evolution of accepting your shadows, loving your shadows, embracing your shadows, working through your shadows, and then being able to bring that highest expression out into the world because you've done some of the hard pain work.
this is really fascinating, but I want to apologize because I feel a little bit left in the dark. I've never heard the term human design before, and it sounded like you guys were talking about astrology. So I wonder if you could kind of help us and help our listeners. Just kind of, can you talk about what this is and where it comes from and how you got into it? And then we also want to get back to your childhood, but geez.
We're all over the place today.
Human design was channeled by Ra Uru in 1987 during a supernova in Spain. He received these 5 days of this intense, he said it was a voice, this intense voice that was just giving him all this information for 5 days. And he was told that this information was for him to bring out into the world. That honestly, it was truly for the children of the world, because we as a society are not aligned energetically, and we're killing the planet because we're off energetically. We're doing, forcing, we're not living aligned. So what it truly is, and this is why I even gave it a chance, is because it is the combination of the Hindu chakras, astrology, quantum mechanics, the Chinese I Ching, and the tree of life. So it's the combination of all of those modalities that really bring multicultural, traditional, and modern together in one. And I know, and I think we all know, that for anything to progress and stay, so people want to learn it, it has to bring the traditional with the new. We can't just stay in the traditional so much, because people don't want, the new age people most of them don't want to dive in. So that's what I loved about this, is it brings that traditional wisdom with new quantum mechanics, and it's a way that you can actually see your energy based on the time of your birth, place, and birth date.
You said see my energy. So what do you mean by that? What kind of energy would I be looking at?
So when you enter your birth time, birth date, and birthplace, there's a chart that is that comes out. Okay, so it's called a body graph, and in this body graph there are 9 centers. It is through human design that 7 of the chakras split in 1781. So the heart chakra, they say, split into the G center and the will center, and the solar plexus split into the emotional solar plexus and the spleen. So these are the centers, energy centers. So when you look at your chart, you see these areas that are white. And what that means is every area in that chart that is white, whether it be a center or a channel or a gate, which are these kind of lines that connect the centers, if they're white, it means that's where you receive energy from other people that you're around and from the environment. So you take in that energy from the other person, it amplifies, but that is not your energy consistently. Now, where there is definition, it's called, that's where there's colored areas in the chart. So tan, red, black, there's different colored areas in the chart. And what that means is that is where you have consistent energy. So that is part of your authentic self. But the truth of the matter is that's just the energy that you put out into the world. So if you guys are around each other, let's say Harmony has a defined G center, which I know she does, and you have an open G center, which is
a G center.
Not a G spot, a G center.
But there would be a spot in the center of the G.
Actually, the G center represents like love, direction, and identity. So Harmony actually has her incarnation cross. This is really what she's here to be and give the world, is all about love and beauty. So she has defined G center. So she has a pretty good sense of who she is, the direction of her life. And then for me, or maybe if you have an open, I'm not sure, but if your center is white, your G center, what that means is you would take in her energy and almost identify yourself as her. So a lot of people, and I have this for myself, I have an open G, so I would come into the auras of other people and I would change. I would morph. I would like, why am I acting this way? But it was because I was taking in their energy, not mine. And then I would react in a way that wasn't true for myself because I thought it was who I was, when in fact it was their energy.
I do that almost in every situation that I'm in. But I also started to think of that as my authentic self, as just being a chameleon is themselves.
Mm-hmm. And that is after you realize that, after you notice that you have the open G center, you can almost, like any pain or beliefs that you've created about yourself because of morphing or mistakes that you've kind of made, you can forgive and let that go. And it is a gift, especially as a teacher or a coach or anything like that, where you're of service, because you actually can know that person at such a deep level, and they're not sure how you do that, but it's because you're taking in that identity while you're in that space. So I'm sure you've been around people, you just know things about them. And that could be why, if your G center is open. But that happens with every single center that is open. You take in that energy.
And so then there's like types of people in the world. And I think like the reflector type has a lot of open centers. Is that true?
Yeah. So there are 5 different types: the manifesting generator, the projector, the manifestor, and the reflector. So the generator, manifesting generator are the types that really love to work, we have the energy to work. I'm a manifesting generator. So when we're inspired, we will work all the time. It won't feel like work. It's like what makes us thrive. We're here to be of service in the physical form. It makes up both of those types make up about 70% of society. And that's why we're out of alignment, is because the generator types are initiating and doing like out of alignment. That's the manifestor only. So we're not resting. We're not truly listening to what we need. We're just working. The projector, which is your type, that is 20% of society. And really what that is you take in you have a lot more open centers, most likely. So you take in other people's energy. So you're actually able to read and see other people's energy more than you can see your own. So a lot of the times it's really important for you to have your practice to really intentionally know who you are, because you can take in that energy. But you do have the G center defined. So that's a conundrum, which we all have in our chart. Then the manifestor is 9%. They're basically what we're taught that we're all to do. We get an idea, we initiate, and we start the process. It's really not about that. Generator types have to wait to respond in the physical form. Projectors have to wait to be invited and seen and drawn in while you do self-care practices. Manifestors initiate the process, but then often need support, because I kind of like describe them as a sprinter. They get the idea and they go, but then they need to rest. And then the reflector has every single center open. So it means white.
Right.
And they're kind of like the mirror to society. So they're taking in the energy. And if they're not thriving, they're not happy, then something's off. We're out of alignment, or where they're at. So they actually need to be in nature a lot.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So what I'm hearing is a kind of a grand unified structure to interpret personality and interpret energy, something that kind of along the lines of astrology with Indian astrology, Ayurveda, putting that together. And it sounds like there's also a kind of theme of historicity to it, that you're putting it in line with historic events, and like an age of Aquarius, for example. So that's what I'm hearing. And so you were attracted to this.
Oh, yes. I feel like it came to me at the right time. So as you guys know, I did a lot of years of practice, Ashtanga practice. I ended up not listening to my body and being hypermobile, where my wrists got cysts and my back was a mess. And then I had alopecia because I was pushing too much and I wasn't listening to my body. So I had to take it really slow. So I had that first, which honestly, that was the start to my healing was the Ashtanga practice. That was where I started to make the decisions that were in alignment with me, where I was no longer just settling. I made like a decision to end a 10-year relationship. I mean, there were those big decisions because of the awareness. But then when these things happened to my body, I could do pranayama, but I missed the practice of the physical practice. So I started diving deeper into coaching aspects and how to ask questions in a way so students could get deeper into things. And then after I went through that, then human design came to me. And the first year, I was like, oh, this doesn't really interest me. I'm not interested in this because I have a tendency to go all in. But then a year later, I read a book within 2 weeks. And I said, okay, it's right timing. This feels right. And it gave me tangible evidence. And I can explain a little bit. So I have an open head in Ajna. So what that means is I get lots of ideas and inspirations, and I have very, very open-minded. My Ajna is completely open, which means that I am very open-minded to all things. So I question myself in uncertainty a lot because of the ideas and things that come to me constantly. So there's uncertainty in there. And then with my 48 and my son, inadequacy. So I always question myself, like, during this Ashtanga practice, am I really, truly, is this true for me, these things that were coming up, or am I making this up? Like, am I truly making this up? Is this not true? Are my experiences not true? Are my memories not true about my past? Like, 'cause there's stuff with my mom, like she would not admit things. So I was at that space. I still continued to do it because I loved where it brought me. But I always had that question like, oh, well, what if I'm just making all this up? You know?
And the Ajna center is like the head chakra area, right? Just for those listening
like
who don't know.
Yes. Yeah, and the Ajna it's all about beliefs, open-minded and beliefs. And then the head is all about ideas and inspirations. So when I found human design and I saw my chart and I went into my chart, it gave me the tangible evidence that I already knew, but I questioned. So it just gave me the evidence. Oh, like, okay, this is actually true. You're not making this stuff up. And then because of that belief and that knowledge, now I was more able to be more confident, more bold, and step into a higher purpose than what I was originally doing, because I always felt inadequate and unsure. And now I no longer feel that, because I know that's just part of who I am, and it's okay.
Right. So it like confirmed that feeling of inadequacy and feeling unsure and like uncertain about even your own beliefs or your own understanding of the world. And then because you saw that in your design chart, then you were able to kind of recognize that as just like an aspect of your personality, and that it wasn't something that you needed to like
own.
Yeah, you could just be like,
or
that's what or fix, right? Yeah, like that's something that I do, and it's fine. I'm just gonna go with my gut, or like, listen to what reason, higher reason, or higher wisdom, or something.
Yeah. And you know what? Before I even found human design, that reminded me when you said gut. So as a manifesting generator or sacral authority, it is about gut feelings. And for that, a year prior, I consciously remember making the choice of, I am following my gut, even if it doesn't make sense. And that's how I got to where I was going.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
That's how Trump became president.
The
same way, just followed his gut right into prison. It makes sense to me that I'm seeing you as a 14-year-old, just kind of couch surfing in Vermont, and there's a kind of aimlessness to that profession. And did you end up in a line of work? I'm trying to figure out like what you looked like as a 19-year-old and how you ended up in Tampa.
Oh, well, as a 19-year-old, let's see, what was I doing at 19?
You're in all kinds of trouble, obviously, but like,
yes. That's exactly what I was doing. I was honestly, I think I'd lived in a car for a little bit. I drank, like that's all I was doing. I was only partying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just wandering the earth from party to party.
What 19-year-old can afford a car
recovering.
to live in, though? That's so...
Oh, it was my friend's car.
It was your friend's car. Yeah.
So what shifted this? What changed for you?
I wanted, but how did you get from 19? We're talking about 19 and then to Tampa. That was my original question. Let her roll with it.
Okay, so at 19, I was still in Vermont, and this actually goes hand in hand. So 19, I was still in Vermont partying a lot, and then I got pregnant. So I had my son.
Right.
I had my son at 21.
Wow.
And
that's a long pregnancy.
From 19 to 21.
Really long. Jesus.
It took a while.
Somewhere in between there.
That's just brutal. Things weren't bad enough for you.
Exactly. I know. But I followed my, even though I didn't live with my parents, they moved down here and I didn't have anything up there. I had my son. Yeah. And his father and I split up because he was actually cheating on me and I didn't know it. So I moved down here when Jaden was 8 months, and that's how I moved down here. And honestly, to tell you the truth, that was a huge step in me stopping, because now I had a purpose. I had a reason to take care of someone and to, you know, so I truly believe my kids actually did save me. And I feel like they showed up at certain times for me to wake up. And I truly feel that I have been supported. Even though I wasn't supported by my family, I feel like I was supported in other ways, because there were certain things that I used to do in life that I just stopped. And that were very toxic to myself. And I just stopped. And I don't know. I think I was guided. And I think it was because I was here to make more impact. I really do.
Yeah.
You had a second child soon after?
Yep. So I moved down here and then I met my ex. We got married 4 months after we met. He was in the military. Wow. And then he wanted to have his son. So I had Declan, who is my second son. And that relationship was very abusive. So that was an abusive relationship.
I'm sorry.
I was in that relationship. Oh, it's okay. I mean, it's still funny because people would always say, I'm sorry for some of the things that you've gone to. And I've always known that it was for a reason. So I would say I would never change it regardless. And then I saw my chart, which just shows that. So
well, it's, you know, I've been witness to an abusive relationship, and I've been witness to the abuse and trauma that my mother's experienced. And I know what it's done to her and how it's affected her ability to interact with others for decades. And yet she's learned so much from the experience, and it's shaped her in such an interesting way. So it's so difficult to look at your past and see things that you just wish you'd made a different decision, but at the same time, it informs so much of who you are presently. And it's you know, having regrets it's impossible.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have my second son.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
And I remember I get to the point. So if you know astrology, at 28 to 32, there's a shift in Saturn. So at 28 is when I don't know what it was. At one point I said, I'm not doing this anymore. My boys cannot think this is okay.
Right.
So I planned for an entire year to get out, because he controlled everything. I had to ask permission to get a job. I had to ask permission to do anything. So I had to plan for an entire year and then wait for him to mess up to get him out of the house. So he was in jail. So
wow.
I was able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Often that's how, I was going to try and make a joke out of this, but it's actually just real, is that the law is so sexist that, you know, if a man, say, catches his wife in bed, and he kills her, it's a crime of passion, and so you get a lower manslaughter charge. But if you're a woman and you plan your husband's murder for a year, you can do 4 times the time.
So where did this go to murder?
Just the amount of planning that a woman will do to get out of a marriage.
Yeah, she has to, though.
And especially an abusive
that's the difference
one.
Because of the physical differences of men and women, and especially like very strong men that have like brute strength.
Yeah.
And if you're fearful for your life, you have to plan.
Yeah. And I was more so, he had me believing so much that I was nothing. That was nothing. You would not, I was this tiny little meek little person that would not even speak. So it was totally different. But what gave me the strength was only my kids. It wasn't even for me at that point. It was for my kids.
Yeah.
And I will not forget the look on his face when I showed up in court, and I actually had a lawyer, and I had it all set for when that happened. He was like, you should have seen his face. He thought he was just going to get out of jail and it was going to be fine. It would be exactly what it was before, but I had done it so I could get out in a safe way. And I didn't want the boys to suffer more than they had already.
So you had waited for him to get picked up on a charge. You kind of anticipated that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, wow. I waited.
And how did you know that he would get arrested? Had he been getting arrested? How did you know that would happen?
Well, I called the cops.
Oh, yeah. I see. I thought you were waiting for him to get picked up on a assault charge from the bar or something. But no, I see. So when he abused you, called the police, and then this is it. We're done. You waited for that.
Right. So there was the incident. I went to work the next day. I showed them the marks. They let me go to get an injection, and then they got and picked him up. So it was the only way I felt like I could get out, because he had total control. And honestly, I would not recommend it, because he could have easily killed me. It was through choking. Sure. So, he could have easily killed me. So, I got out in a way that was safe. And the boys are good, and so but that was 20 years ago. So I've been able to raise the kids.
To process it too. Yeah.
Is this about when you started doing yoga at the same time? Were you weightlifting at this time as well?
I was weightlifting. It's interesting, because I did that because I needed strength.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I focused on. And then I needed strength. Yeah. And then I needed strength to raise my 2 boys on my own. So I constantly was about strength. Yeah. And then after I found yoga was when I overheard someone calling me the ice princess. And I knew that I was cold.
Right. Yeah. Because you were protecting yourself.
Right. So then I wanted to go to vulnerability, and boy, was I a mess for a long time. It took me about 2 years to be a mess in yoga, but then I was there.
Yeah. I bet a lot of stuff came up in those first few years. Yeah.
Was it yoga at first? Was it Ashtanga yoga later? Or that's kind of normally how it goes? Is that what happened for you?
Actually, someone guided me to a hot yoga place, so I went there. But the person that actually was teaching just graduated Ashtanga, like a certification. Yeah. And then I met Allie Ford.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I know that name, Allie Ford. Where would I know her from?
Florida. I think she came to one of our workshops.
That sounds right. But I don't know. I know that you worked with Krista Shirley, and Krista Shirley, I coached and supervised for a year when she was teaching kids in the schools, in the public schools in Orlando, and that's how I met her. As my boss and I, Jean, we flew down to Orlando and met her. Tim Feldman had introduced us and said you should work with Krista, and so I think you started working with her like right after that year that
Yeah, so I worked with Allie first because it was in this community here, Allie Ford. I I don't think that she was authorized at the time, but she was teaching Ashtanga. And then I wanted to go deeper. And Krista, I know I'm pig-headed sometimes, and I know.
Well, the two of you would get along really well.
Well, I knew that she would push me.
Yeah. Because if you're pig-headed and she is as strong as she is, then that's going to be an alchemical combination.
Yeah, but it was amazing because she would just say it in the most, like, I'm like, ugh. Like when I was trying to do back bends, I'm like, well, it really hurts when I put my arms over my head. Can't I just do it like this? And she would just look at me and be like, you can.
Wow.
Yeah. I love Krista. Yeah, she's great. Yeah. I actually met her in Thailand when I was teaching on Paul Delahan's teacher training there at Yoga Thailand back in maybe 2004, 2005, I forget. But that's how we first met, even before she went to Mysore.
Before she had her baby too.
Yeah. She hadn't got married yet. I think they were maybe engaged at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we've
had a long connection. Yeah, but she's very splat. She'll just say it like it is. And she's very open as well. Not, you always know what you get. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. When I made that decision, I was like, oh yeah, she's gonna push me. That's what I need.
Yeah. and you did like a training with her then.
Yep. It was like an internship, and then I would help guide even in the Mysore class and stuff afterwards too.
Nice. Yeah. And so by that time you'd already like kind of processed a lot of your past and like gone through all that stuff with Allie, or that really came out then? Okay.
It was Krista.
Yeah.
Krista. I remember. Yeah. And that's why I knew it was her. Because I would work on back bends forever, and everyone would cry and do all, and I'm like, when am I gonna cry? Like, why? Because it's been 2 years, But then doing the work with her, that finally when I broke and I cried, like I just fell to the floor and I said random stuff that no one could even understand what I was saying, and that from that moment on for like a whole year, I was just a mess. I was a mess.
Wow.
Like everything.
Speaking in tongues is a normal response to Kapotasana.
Yes, I can see that.
Did you feel like that area of your body was opening up, that like it was releasing a lot of like past trauma, or did you like what was your body experience?
Yeah, it definitely was. There was I still feel like I have a lot of stuff in my back. I really do. And that's why I have back stuff still. I have, when you think at 14, you're living on your own, then have kids, you're taking care of these two. Like I put responsibility on me a lot. So I did everything. I figured everything out. I did everything. So there was a lot of stuff that came there, especially with the heart. I remember one time too, I was doing a forward fold and she goes, it looks like you're rounding over your heart. Why is that? So just those little questions are like, oh, I know what this answer is. So there was a lot of opening there.
It's interesting. Amazing. When I moved from New York, then to England, and then I made a big shift to go to teach in Taiwan. And I was really struck by how the circumstances of the society can change and shift the body that's manifested in the Ashtanga yoga room. Whereas, I was so used to crying, terrified people in New York, people who are really like just brutalized and out there on their own, trying to make it, trying to hustle, trying to do anything they could to live and survive, and then, become, make it big somehow. And then I went to Taiwan, where most people live with their parents until they're about 33. And that's that's a real stat. They in their mid 30s, they finally move out of their parents' house, and so something like at least 1 out of 3 of my students grab their own knees and back bends. 1 out of 3, which is like, it was 1 out of 100 in New York. Because the brutality of the survival to live is so different for an American than it is for a Taiwanese person who's really, their needs are so much more taken care of. They're not just hustling to live.
But is it that their needs are taken care of, or is it they're less materialistic and like wanting to make things happen?
Well, I'm less ambition. Materialistic, that's kind of, it's like a giant mall, Taipei. Everyone's buying and selling, designer goods. It's just that there's so many more resources available to them. They don't have to hustle as much because they're not, hustling to live.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too. Like if you look at Louise Hay's sort of, healing your body through like where you're holding emotions in your body, the base of the spine, and maybe you can speak to this in relation to human design, because I'm sure there's some correlations, but like the base of the spine and the low back's really all about your financial survival and like your ability to provide, and even like that area of the Muladhara chakra, right? Your survival instincts, are you safe? Are you secure? Do you have income? Do you have a home? Do you have all those things, right? And then the middle of the back, sort of behind the heart area, is all about your emotional support. So are you feeling emotionally supported? Are you feeling safe emotionally? Are you feeling like, people around you are providing a space for you to open up and like express yourself in an emotional way? And then it goes up into the cervical spine. I think that's all about like your way of seeing the world. So like when people have neck issues, often that's because they're getting stuck either in expressing themselves and inability to express yourself, but also stuck in a one-pointedness of seeing something, like an inability to see multiple perspectives or many directions, right? They're kind of stuck in one way of thinking or being. Is there anything like that with, I know, the chakras and the meridian system in human design that like correlates somehow?
Yeah, so it goes into more of the center. So the root center is all about security, like you said, grounding. Right. The one thing that's added into that is right timing and not forcing. So I mean, I feel our society is made to really force time to make things happen because we're in a rush to make things happen, and then we want to create more instead of just being happy where we're at. So it's all about right timing and not forcing. The will center is about like value and still that pushing forward. So if you have a defined will, a lot of time what happens is, like I have a defined will, if I need to do something and if I'm exhausted, I can still do it. I'll do it regardless,
Right.
So what happens is I burn myself out, which is probably why I had alopecia and thyroid and all that stuff. Plus I would always swallow down my words. I would never say anything. So that's all about like value and your value. Do you believe in your value? Do you believe that you're able to put yourself out there, that people value you? So there's those different aspects. And then the emotional, solar plex is actually a huge one. Because I mentioned that the solar plexus in human design split, right? So it was like, it's the spleen and the emotional solar plexus. So in human design, really, they say we've been living out of the spleen since forever. It's out of fight or flight, survival. Like we do things to survive. Now it says by 2027, so this has been happening with the children that are being born, I guess. There's things in there actually that are even talking about the shift in sexuality, the shift in how we see ourselves sexually. We're moving out of the fight or flight into creativity. So we're moving more into consciousness connected with the earth, creative flow, emotional stuff rather than just fight or flight. So I went on a little tangent and I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Just like if you're stuck maybe, or you have some blockages, or you're not honoring those areas of your body, maybe it'll show up even in physical ways. Is it the same?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. So in human design, if you have the will center defined and it's connected to your throat,
Mhm.
and you're pushing, so you're out of alignment, you can burn out your thyroid, which, hello, that's one thing I
That
did.
actually happened. Yeah.
Yes, that's me, because I was pushing. Like
Right.
my entire life was fight or flight, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's learning about those centers and how can you trust rather than
Mhm.
prove, force, make things happen. So it's all about
Yeah.
trusting the energy of what you have consistently and variability, and then just try to trust that process and know what's right for you based on your type.
Right. Yeah. Like what, like, which is all based on when you were born and what was happening, what's happening in your body at that time, what's happening in the stars, all those things.
Well, that has the gate activations is all where the planet, it's the gate that a certain planet was in at the time of
Mhm.
your birth. So there's that, and there's the unconscious. So if you look at your chart, the red side is where the gates or the planets were 88 days before you were born. So these are still part of you, but it's unconscious. You're unaware of these patterns. Then the black side on the right is the gate activations at the time of your born. So we actually have the unconscious and the conscious that we have to balance and be aware of and learn so that we can step into our highest potential, which is really the energy that we're here to be. It's not anything that we do. It's about who we be, how we be, and what we do with that, but it's how we be.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like you're saying, we have certain tendencies and tendencies that we take on from the world. So for like you, it was like really pushing, and like you could push through things, you could like keep going, you could just be doing all the time. And then to see this as your tendency, or even to like experience those physical, I guess like the negative physical results, in this case, like burning out your thyroid, having alopecia, like autoimmune disorders, all this stuff coming up from pushing too much, right?
Yep.
That then to, have this sort of system where you can look to it, or where you're start to explore it, and all of a sudden it gives you a different way of understanding yourself in the world.
Yeah, and it gives you the permission to, like, I always ask myself, now that I know I have the defined will, I always ask myself, am I doing this because I'm obligated and feel like I have to, or is this inspiring? And if I'm too tired and it's not in alignment, if I have that choice to switch it to a different day, I give myself permission. Whereas before, I would push through.
Right.
Out of responsibility
Yeah.
and integrity. Yes.
Yeah. And that was one thing, because we had a consultation, that's why you know my chart. But but that was one thing that I think was really interesting from a projector standpoint, that idea of not necessarily being able to make things happen, but allowing for that right timing to happen, and waiting to be invited. And that's when my energy, or my sort of presence, is going to be the most potent, is being invited into a space, or being invited to a place, rather than like trying to like send out an email, or send out a a resume, or whatever it is, right? That's like less of a powerful place for me, whereas it could be a very powerful place for someone else.
Most likely a manifester.
Right.
That's it. Yes. So, and for you, yeah, the projector honestly is like, the projectors really are here to guide. Like, you see the energies of other, you feel the energies, and you're really here to guide others into what is in alignment for them. That's really but you need to rest. Like, you actually need to rest more than almost anyone. Like, they say 20 hours of work or 20 hours of rest and 4 hours of work, just because
Perfect.
energetically, yeah. And most projectors I talk to, they're like, oh, yes. Whereas if you say that to a manifesting generator, I would be like, what would I do with the rest of my time? Like, I need to work. So that it gives you permission to, oh, I do know that about myself, and it's okay. It's not like I have to compare or prove or anything to anyone else. Like, this is my energy and I'm at my fullest potential when I'm invited into things and it feels right for me.
Yeah, it was very challenging when you live in a world that's all about manifesting and generating.
I'm not fond of it.
Yeah, I want to know what Russell's chart is now. I'm so
I
curious.
do
too. He's going to be like a reflector or something.
And what is that again? What's a reflector again?
The reflector is when all the centers, so the shapes in the chart, are all white. So that means you're constantly taking in energy in every single center. So inspiration, ideas, beliefs, throat, identity, willpower, spleen, emotions, and root.
And how can I get all of that out of me?
Well, we don't know if you're a reflector yet.
No, but I want it out, though.
He wants it out.
That I always say, it starts with awareness.
Awareness.
That's why, to know. That's why I feel like just knowing your chart and seeing that, you can start to kind of experiment with it. I'm kind of feeling this way. I have an emotional open solar plexus. So I'm going to go out of this space. I'm going to see if I still feel that way. So you get to kind of experiment and try things out and notice things. It's all about the awareness first. Just like with any healing, you can't heal unless you are aware of whatever's going on. So if you're aware of the energy that you take in, you can start to make choices.
I'm often very aware that I've been disturbed, and then I want to exit the situation as quickly as I can and get away from stimulus.
Are you saying that now? No, I'm just joking.
No. That was good, though.
Just about anything can stimulate me to want to hide. Yes.
We'll have to check out your chart later, Russ.
This is a hiding time.
So I want to hear a little bit more too about your practice journey, because you're like a full on like go-getter. You're in the training, you're doing the Ashtanga every day, you're assisting, you're like living the Ashtanga dream.
And then we met her in Atlanta right in the thick of it, and you were losing your hair a little bit, and it was frightening.
Yeah. So I did that for a long time. I really loved like teaching and assisting, and I loved my practice. But then I always just pushed too much. So I pushed too much on my wrists, and then they started hurt. I couldn't even put pressure on my wrists, and everything that I would try to do was causing me pain. So I realized, okay, even though the Ashtanga practice says 6 days a week, regardless, I'm going to take a break, because I feel like I needed to take a break. My body was telling me something is up. So I spent a lot of time just healing and resting and making sure I got sleep, because I wasn't sleeping. I would get up in the morning and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, I found like I really started loving pranayama. So I started doing pranayama, because I was like, okay, I'm still doing my practice, because I had that guilt of not doing my practice, because I loved my practice and I was supposed to do my practice. So I did pranayama, and then I just went more into like self-study. So I started studying myself and learning about myself. So I feel like I started externally in the physical form, because that was what I knew at the moment, and that's what needed my attention.
Yeah.
But now it's a lot more subtle. It's a lot more subtle of a practice. I still do my self-study, pranayama. I still love that. But the physical practice, I don't know, maybe after my back is better, maybe I can dive into that again, but we'll see.
Yeah, but your body started to heal. Your body started to heal through the rest and through taking a different approach to your spiritual discipline.
Yes, it did. Because I have all my hair back.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So at this point, when we met you in Atlanta, were were on the most part, were you making an income through teaching yoga? Is that what your
Yes.
work was? Is that, and what had you been doing before? Like when you were in your ex, when you're in your marriage, what kind of work were you doing then?
Well, at that point, I really wasn't working because I had asked permission to work. So I was just doing office work I finally got into. But after we separated, I started doing personal training.
Okay, yeah.
So I had been a personal trainer and I put myself through school for exercise science and health sciences.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So I was a personal trainer for about 10 or so years, maybe even longer, maybe 12. Because it gave me that time to be there for my boys that I needed to pick them up, to bring them to school, all of
Right.
that. And then from there, that's when I found yoga, and I was like, oh, I actually love the feeling that I feel more so now than I do with lifting, because everyone's so thankful for just being here and they're not constantly comparing their bodies and I'm not good enough and I'm
Right.
not strong enough. So that is when I went into yoga and the more softer vulnerability type of thing. And then I did yoga and taught yoga for probably 6 or 7 years. And then I went into coaching, and then into human design coaching.
Because it does seem like your path is directed towards the changing of habits, which is
Mm-hmm.
from what I could glean from yoga is the whole point is like you're trying to shift negative patterns that are not conducive to health. And it's interesting the way that you were looking at your practices and the way that you were looking at your I don't want to say pastime. I mean to say like your physical practices that you were doing with personal training. It's like you were really looking at it like how is this going to help me with my energy? And then in turn, you're looking at your client and saying, well, what do I at root need to help their direction, their
Right.
habit, and really getting to the heart of their energetic bodies is what it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely. That is exactly. And I feel like I learned as a manifesting generator too, because I used to get down on myself about why do I keep shifting from one thing to another, like personal training, then yoga, then this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why can't I just sit still and do something forever? Why can't I just
Right.
be inspired by that forever? But as a manifesting generator, actually, we're here to do many things. And it's actually, I always like to say now, I have lived already many lifetimes in this life, because
Yeah.
for manifesting generators, well, more so for manifesting generators, it's about do it until it inspires you. And if it no longer inspires you, it's given you what you needed for your evolution to grow more. So what is going to come up for you to respond to for that next thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I feel like I went from personal training to yoga to coaching to this. It's because and the yoga was the hardest one for me to like let go a little bit. I was like, no, I have to hold on. I have to hold on. Like, I have to. But then after I realized that, it's like, okay, but it gave me what I needed at that time. And I still have the subtle practices, and it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that's like such a deep learning lesson, especially like in the Ashtanga yoga realm. We're so indoctrinated that this is a practice for life and it has to look this way and it has to be done like this, and like if you're not doing it this way, you're not doing it, and it's just like so intense, and it creates so much shame and guilt and destructive thinking and destructive patterns when we hang on to that form so tightly, I think. And learning to like just open the fingers a little bit and like be a little softer, let go a little bit more, is not that you have to let go of the form completely unless you're feeling called to, but just like softening the grip on the structure and the orthodoxy.
And on top of that, if you're the profession is also carved out in stone, where if you're not teaching a 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Mysore class, what are you really? Do you have any
Right.
worth in our community? Do you have any value? And like, well, I don't have any money, if that's what you mean.
So yeah, it's but like you say, it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest transition, I think, for people to make. And that's like also, I think, what called me to coaching was helping people through that stage, that transition where it's like, this really isn't working. You've identified like, I want to do this thing, but I'm not doing this thing. I don't know why I'm not doing this thing. Is it working for me? Isn't it working for me? Do I just need to like push myself? Why isn't it working? And I think like stage of life too has a lot to do with it, especially for women entering like, perimenopause, entering middle age, you have older children or, middle-aged kids, you have a lot of demands, you have a job.
Middle-aged kids.
Middle-aged kids.
I do.
Like
my
teen years.
That's what we have is middle-aged.
You have like many, many things going on, and it's like you don't quite have that same like freedom of time and energy that maybe you did when you were younger, or something's happened in your life that's created a health crisis, right? Where you're like, my body's just saying no now.
I haven't
There's
slept.
nothing I can do.
I haven't slept in 10 years. I haven't eaten anything more than,
a carrot,
apples and water and a chapati once a day. And then like, oh yeah, everything fell apart. I can't move my back anymore because all I do is lift bodies.
What drew you into the coaching aspect of things? Was it just like the self-study you were doing and the self-reflection?
Actually, the thing that brought me into that was I was helping with Mysore. And I just felt this, I don't know, this calling or whatever, that I wanted to start helping the students go deeper through asking questions, not through telling or just like, because I knew for myself the internal is great, but when someone asks me a question that makes me really like dig deep, things come up.
Yeah, so transformative, right?
Yeah. And I knew with like the students doing the practice that they were already doing that. So these questions would be so powerful, right? So that was the first thing, is I wanted to bring it to the students in that way. And then it just shifted and changed and evolved.
Yeah, you went on a whole journey. And now you're mainly focused on doing the human design coaching combo.
Yeah, so now I do like readings and stuff, so I can connect with people and help them learn their energies and what that means to them. And then I do coaching aspects, but actually I just started a business with Annalena called the Align Living Academy. And we actually have a human design certification that we have created because we actually want to bring it to coaches, professionals, leaders. The amount that it has changed with the awareness of who we are and how confidently we put ourselves out there now. And every reading, I can't say there's been never a reading that something did not touch, where there was almost like oh my gosh, yes, I know this. I know there's tears. I mean, there's a lot. So we want to bring it out and make global impact. We want to bring it to coaches. I mean, the certification we have running right now, we have people, Netherlands, UK. So we're really wanting to bring this out into the world. So we help humanity as a whole love, accept themselves. And then in turn, they will accept others. And then we can also teach our kids. So that's our goal.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, and it's such a useful tool. I mean, it's a complex tool, but it's useful.
Well, the human person is a complex.
The human person is complex and in complex pain. Yeah.
Yeah, but I always talk about it like we do yoga. It's like the onion. It's your onion. You're taking layer after layer. So what happens is a lot of people will just want to know everything. They want to know the type, strategy, authority, centers, gates, channels, like how to, all the things. And it's like, okay, that's the information, but you're not doing the work. So it doesn't mean anything. So the way that we teach is all through, okay, type in strategy, now embody it. How does that feel to you? Do you notice when you're invited into things? Is it easy? Do you notice when you push into things? So it's the layering effect of going into the type and strategy, then maybe the profile. So it's about the embodiment. And that's really what human design is for too. It's connecting to our bodies. Our bodies know, and it guides us. We get goosebumps. We get these feelings of like you're just drawn to people, but then our mind controls it. So it's really about connecting to the body and then having that balance between body, gut, mind.
This reminds me of a conversation we had last week on the podcast, which was about the Vedas and, what is the goal of a society? What is, what are their monuments? What do they look to? And the Vedas and the Indus Valley as a monument was their devotion to awareness, which doesn't give you a lot of pillars and statues and giant phalluses. You don't get that when the point of your society is awareness. And it reminded me that one of the things that was so shifting in Western society was modernism and the tearing down of imperial monuments. And then those were replaced with new monuments. But so often those are, like the personalities, you tear down the Romanovs and you replace it with Stalin, or you tear down the Imperial Society of China and you replace it with Mao. And it's tearing down monuments to empire and replacing them with awareness, an interest in awareness, an interest in looking at the self and the patterns of the self and how the self operates with its own intrinsic energy and how it looks out into the world, would probably be much more conducive to a helpful healing society.
Oh, definitely. And there's a lot of like with the open centers, I didn't even go into the conditioning aspects. There's so many ways that we are conditioned by where we live, who we're around. We're conditioned from the minute that we were born. We're even conditioned by the energy of our parents, because let's say I have open centers in one area and my dad or mom has a defined center. I would take in that energy for all that time and think it's me, but it's not me. So when I get out of that, I'm conditioned. Like I believe what my mother believes. So I believe, but it's when you're able to see your chart and say, wait a minute, I have that open. This is a conditioning aspect. This is not me. So you're able to kind of release that. And it's the awareness of the energy of who you truly are. And I will say that because the blueprint is at the time of your birth. So it doesn't change. The only thing that changes is your conditioning by your experiences and your beliefs and who you're around. So when you can look at that again and say, wait a minute, that's open. I choose not to believe that anymore. And that's what I was able to do, because I had done so much work in like with yoga and slowing down. I was able to just look at that and be like, oh, well, that belief was a load of crap because that has nothing to do with me. That was a belief by my mother because she believed that.
That sounds exactly like Patanjali's observation of the samskaras, and that they're built up of these little seeds, and you can destroy these little seeds by observing that they're just stories and they don't have to belong to you. Interesting.
Wow, it's so interesting about human design.
I know. I think we made a believer, maybe.
Or at least maybe a twinge of interest.
We planted a seed of curiosity.
Well, I would love to introduce you to our audience. How could people explore human design with you, or explore learning more about themselves with you, where could they find out more about themselves?
You can find me at miranda-mitchell.com. That is my website. Also, the Aligned Living Academy.com. That's with my partner and I, where we do the certification for coaches and so forth. And as always, Instagram, Miranda J. Mitchell. Find me there.
Awesome.
That's so good. I highly recommend a consultation and a session. It was so interesting and informative. We'll have to get Russell
Okay,
on.
so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Harmony.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. She's like, wait a minute. This is my podcast. Okay, so what was there something that you learned that you were like, yeah, that's something.
I think the thing that really, I think like really confirmed something that I already knew, but hadn't really like, maybe put it into words before, was that strategy that you were talking about, that wait to be invited. Because, like I very rarely ever like reach out to a yoga studio, say, oh, can I come do a workshop or whatever, right? I always wait
to be invited,
to have people send me an email to invite me. I never stretch that way. And I always hear about other yoga teachers who do this and send out like, hey, I'm whoever, and I teach I'm a whatever authorized yoga teacher level 2, can I come to your studio and teach a workshop or whatever? I never really do that. And so always when I'm invited, it works out really well. And sometimes I've been invited by people who don't own the schools, and sometimes that doesn't work out as well. And then even like with just like my whole life, to be honest, is always like, I never feel like I'm really in control of it in a way. Like I'm not really like,
you're writing it.
Forging. Yeah. It's like surfing a wave. Like I'm just sort of like going where the flow and the energy feels like it's moving me rather than like directing it. And so that really felt like it resonated with that strategy, because it's much more about, and then also listening to my gut, because my spleen was my center of knowing. And that's always
in the now.
Yeah, that's always like the thing. And so it really reinforced to me, like just listen to your gut. You know if this is right or not right, and like just go with your instinct. And that's kind of how I just live life, really. Riding the wave and like listening to my gut instinct about things.
That's how you end up married to me, honestly, for that matter.
Well, that's how it can be. It's like easy that way. It feels good that way. I mean, life can be truly easy when you trust that. And you're splenic. So like, in the now, you just know, Yeah.
And I was like working with a business coach at the time, or just like sort of nearing when we were doing our consult, and so much of the strategy was like about making things happen and like putting yourself out, like all about manifesting and like all the things that you have to do in order to make things happen. And I was just like, I was trying so much, and I really burnt myself out because I was like taking on that energy of like what's working for someone else in their own sort of, design constitution. And for me, it was working because I was able to kind of take that energy and transform it into my own, but it also was like burning me out a lot. So,
right. So it's just not, it does work, but it's not sustainable. It's not how you want to live your life. Yeah.
Yes. And then I felt like I wasn't really living my life. I was living someone else's life. Even though it was my life. It was just like, oh my God, what's going on? Why am I like in this crazy, like, insane schedule and like having to do all these crazy things all the time? It didn't feel easy. And when I follow that, like more like surfing the wave and like listening to my gut, it feels easy. So that was really interesting, like not going against myself, like learning how not to go against myself too, right? Like just having that confirmation and that affirmation of like, okay, is this going with the flow? Is this like really, and then also like really listening and trusting myself, because sometimes we don't do that, right? We think, oh, I should do this, or I should say yes, or whatever, right? Rather than like, is this right or wrong? Do I want to or not? Right. And just like, yes, no, yes, no, like going in the moment, in the now with my like gut intuition, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing it's really all about sustainability and ease. Like that's truly what everyone wants in life, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
I would think.
I want to be left alone. If I could just have that, it'd be good.
I'm going to sit in on your session.
People, I do want to be invited to things, you know, like an art gallery. But I want to say no and then not do that thing. Yeah, that's where that's my sweet spot.
Maybe all of his centers. What if all of your centers are strong, like colored, defined? Yeah. What kind of person is that?
The devil himself.
No, that is
red
actually,
all right down the line.
That is actually a manifesting generator, and it's rare, but it does happen. My niece is that. She has everything defined.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So she like just really knows who she is and is really just out in the world intense. Making change.
Huh.
She is just intense. Like you can just see, she just sits there and she's like, she's just intense. And she's young. She's 12. She's intense. Yeah. I think Russell, you do have either your ajna or I think your ajna is defined. I think. Probably.
Yeah. He's stubborn.
Defined.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Very stubborn.
No, you have consistent energy there.
Yes, it is consistent for sure.
Relentless is what my niece calls it.
No.
My niece says Uncle Russ is relentless. Yeah, that's how she describes me. When I'm teasing her, I'll do a thing where I'll play dumb. It's like, well, what do you mean by basketball? Like the ball is in the basket? What do you like? And you want to do that right now? What do you?
This is like a technique on how to frustrate children.
Yeah. And then she says, I just like most people will like let go after a bit and like stop and like, haha, that was funny. But I won't with her. I'll just keep going until she's so maddened that she has to leave me alone.
That's interesting.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today. You are our first human design expert, and it was just really wonderful to hear your journey and listen and learn all these things. I love your arm
sleeve, your beautiful tattoos. Yeah. This is fantastic.
Thank you. I was just going through them. I mean, Arjuna's arrow is here. Arjuna's arrow with the moon, lotus. I'm going to Egypt in September, so I have the Ankh here with the eye.
Nice.
I love that. And
fantastic.
So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, enjoy Egypt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.